Well, first, I just want to say to the people who couldn't make it tonight, if you are a member of the International Association of Emergency Managers, or you are interested in becoming a member and becoming a part of this student chapter, you can send me an email at svb6231@psu.edu. My name is Samantha Berman, and I'm going to introduce our speaker for tonight. So we are happy to have Dr. Tonya Thornton with us. She's currently a principal with Delta Point Solutions, LLC, which is an interdisciplinary social policy and administrative science consulting firm focused on Homeland Security initiative, offering subject matter expertise in public safety, critical infrastructure, and emergency management. Previously, she was the director of grants at George Mason University's Schar School of Policy and Government. She was also a research assistant professor in the Master of Emergency Management and Homeland Security program. Dr. Thornton's been published in several journals, including the Journal of Emergency Management and the American Journal of Public Health. She is currently an active member of the American Society for Public Policy and IAEM, which is why we're here tonight. She has a PhD in public policy and public administration from Mississippi State University, and her areas of expertise include community resilience, critical infrastructure, public safety, high threats, and grid security. So welcome.
Thank you, Samantha. I really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for having me come and speak to you tonight. I do not have a formal agenda or talking points prepared because it was communicated to me that this is more of an open dialogue and a free exchange of ideas, and just kind of, we can chase the rabbit if you like, and we'll always make our loop back around. I promise you that. There's, you get really crafty at tying things together when you need to, put the bow on top of the box. But as Samantha said, I have all of my degrees from Mississippi State University. It's called the Kiss of Death, meaning I have 2 undergraduate degrees in geosciences and political science. I have a master's in public policy and public administration. So yeah, it's kind of like a dual one. And then also my PhD. So really love my program. Actually, I just started working in research and development for a pretty high-level person on campus, and when they start subsidizing your tuition, you tend to stick around when they start making it competitive, but when you get other offers. So there you go. And as soon as I got my PhD, my boss looked at me, he goes, "You got to go." So I ended up in the Northern Virginia area and was going to land in intelligence or GovCon or a think tank, and then just found my way into the academy, which was a really great fit at the time. And now I have transitioned out and opened my own consulting firm, partnering with many other high-level consulting firms that do a lot of these things in the emergency management, critical infrastructure space. One thing that a lot of people don't know about me is that I can speak computer science language, computer programming language. So before before the country started going through this rapid IT development phase with public safety, I was on a team to help develop some of the best and first CompStat programs for Mississippi Highway Patrol. So if you've ever gotten a ticket from an electronic citation system, I used to develop those and all the interface with data analysis. It's called hotspot mapping. So I could predict where you're going to have a DUI. I could predict when it was going to occur. I knew where traffic accidents were going to occur and why, and I knew where the speeding traps were. And so that was a lot of fun, except, you have to also speak law enforcement language. Since then, I've worked with the Department of Defense on critical infrastructure and serving as a subject matter expert for them in terms of a clearinghouse where they can just call upon and ask me different questions, or offering them different materials, whether podcasts, state-of-the-art reports, webinars. I'm venturing over in the smart city space, smart base space. And so there's a lot of money that is being dumped into that right now as it ties specifically back into critical infrastructure and grid security. And if any of you have been paying attention to what happened in Texas in February, the grid can go down very quickly. So there's 4 major systems in critical infrastructure. There's energy, water, transportation, and communication. And if you watch the news this morning, the same company, which is kind of a unique setup in Texas, unlike the rest of the states, has told Texan residents to make sure that they have their air conditioners up above 78 degrees. Do not use their dryers, do not use their ovens for the next week, or it could crash the system again. So back in the day, after the movie with Bruce Willis came out, Live Free or Die Hard, which kind of had this hypothetical scenario around a fire cell where you take out one utility, then it rapidly evolves into the next. At the time, Department of Defense nor the intelligence community really called it a fire cell, and they didn't believe it could actually work. And look at what we're seeing now, 12 years later, or however many years later. So don't have a lack of an imagination is what I would argue. Always be pushing it to the edge, because as in the new company I've founded, the Delta sign almost kind of has a directional connectedness between public safety, emergency management, critical infrastructure. If you don't have one, the other two will go down. So they all have to work in tandem together. And that's where most of our failures in the community resiliency and sustainability world come from, i.e. FEMA and other things. So I'm not as big of a fan with FEMA, but there is a disconnect in social capital and political trust. So if you don't got friends and you haven't established those relationships, you are, I don't want to use that word, you're out of luck. So that's a little bit about me, and you can ask me other questions, but I wanted to give you the opportunity just to kind of open it up and see what you want to know specifically. Not all at once.
Here, I'll kick it off with one that I try to ask all of our speakers. So in our program, we've got some people who are looking to advance their career. And then we also have some people that are new to Homeland Security, public health, emergency management. So what do you wish you knew at that point, or what sort of advice would you give somebody at that point in their career?
That is an excellent question. The first thing is that you need to get engaged in a lot of these professional associations. So by being here this evening, and if you aren't a member of IAEM, I would encourage you to get involved, and particularly at the chapter level and the regional level, because locality and place matters, right? Because that's where you're going to create your most connections, your best network. I'd also get involved, even though it's public administration, the American Society for Public Administration has a section on emergency and crisis management, and it is a really friendly and family-oriented professional network of academics and practitioners that have all sorts of backgrounds. So even if you're not public admin, we have people that have strictly law enforcement backgrounds. We have people that have epidemiology backgrounds. We have people that have, computer modeling backgrounds. Now there's that undercurrent of public admin because, when you think about when disasters occur, there's going to be a local, state, regional, compact, or otherwise national response. So you need to have a better understanding of that governing structure and how that operates, and interfaces with the citizenry. But that was a game changer for me, because when you start partnering with the people within a matter of a year or two of who you're reading in your academic world, whether it's a practitioner or otherwise, you start publishing with them, you start getting involved on research projects, they start introducing you to people, they offer to be references for you when you go out on the, into the professional world looking for a career. They open doors for you. So the sooner you leverage those networks, either through me or by Jen or Samantha or even Walter or Eric Gall, who is the secretary treasurer, he's extremely well connected. Over time, you will build that node around the world, or you'll have different nodes around the world, and it will explode and it will eventually translate. Now, the question becomes for a lot of, especially young people, when does that translate? I would love to tell you it's by the time you're 30, that's when it's going to start taking off, but it's not until you're about 40 that you're really going to see that tipping point. And then all bets are off. So that's why I jumped out when I did. I was like, I'm 40, this is time to go. My network's exactly where I need it to be. I can make that transition pretty quickly out of the academic sector and back into professional consulting R&D projects. So, or take a different job altogether. But to be able to really position yourself in those conversations and maintain those relationships over time. Because a lot of people, it's okay if you don't communicate with them every week. It's okay if you just do it a couple times a year, but drop a line and keep in contact. And also don't just utilize Facebook, definitely utilize LinkedIn to get those recommendations or those skill set endorsements. So that was one thing that really set me apart from some of my colleagues early on. Other things would be, don't put yourself in a box. If you think you want to go the critical infrastructure through emergency management route, just remember, this world meanders like a river. It will ebb and flow also. When you think that you have it figured out, you're going to find something else that's really cool and you may be even more passionate about. And you may not see that there's connection, but there will always be a connection. Someone will make it for you in the future. So don't automatically lose ties to what you've previously done and what you're now engaged in, because it will change over time. And that's a good thing, because that's exactly how we want our response to disasters and other types of events to be, right? We want to go with the times. We don't want to lock ourselves into one way of thinking. Other things I would suggest is, it is always important to think about how you're going to brand yourself now, not just in terms of a resume, but keep a chronological history of everything that you're doing, a CV. I know that a lot of people say, oh, that's only what academics do. No, I would keep a chronological history of everything that you've accomplished from undergrad onward, and then you can cherry pick what you want to go on a resume at any given time, because if you don't keep up with it, you will lose sight of it. It will take more effort to build it later than it would be now. And it's also a really great tool for future planning. So if you take a look at your CV and you're like, well, I've never partnered with a professor on an article, or maybe I could do a conference paper with them, or maybe I could be involved on a research project, or maybe they would want to help me write an op-ed. Take chances, see what those areas to round out your professional development are, and go for it. The general rule of thumb is do 4 new things every year. You'll do more than 4, but if you can strategically say you want to do A, B, C, and D, and they're all different, you'll round it out very quickly in a way in which your peers are not. So, questions on that? None? Is this all making sense? The other thing is, how many of you have a signature line that says what your degree program is, when you're graduating, what your undergrad, if you're in the grad program, as part of your emails? Do it. I would encourage you to do that. And I would be consistent with what that says, and in your resume and in your CV. And then I'd start working on a cover letter, so then that way you can quickly apply for things. Even a personal statement. Why are you interested in this field? And it could be a personal testimony. It could be something that happened, maybe you came across something in your academic upbringing and it really drove you to reconsider what you're interested in. And it's okay if that too evolves. Mine's all over the place. And then life will throw you curveballs, and sometimes you'll think you can do one thing and then you'll end up in a different sector. But if you're really that passionate about it, you'll find a way to merge or marry them, right? I was going to go in intelligence gathering, and I ended up teaching a lot of people in intelligence and working on projects. There you go. I don't know if I'd want to go into intelligence now, just because I've had different experiences, and not just life personally, but now professionally. And I'm like, oh, I really like what I do. This is kind of fun. Maybe I don't want to pigeonhole myself into one specific region or one type of activity. So just be creative and go with it, because you never know what you'll come across.
I have another one if nobody has one.
She came prepared with a firing range.
Well, I'm trying to think of like advice that I've given to students before and asking, turning the question around. But you use the word be creative. And that's something that, especially with COVID, when I have students that are talking to me about like how to break into this field and where to look for jobs, like I use myself as an example. I've got, public health and biodefense degrees, and I work as a contractor with the Coast Guard, which most people would be like, what? But I work in the Office of Specialized Capabilities on our CWMD program. So I tell people, like, be creative. With COVID, there are so many companies like your Googles and your Amazons that are getting into the public health space. And private companies are having their own epidemiologists now because they saw what COVID can do and how quickly it did it. So where are some good places that you would recommend? I mean, we've got like LinkedIn. So like if somebody is trying like at the ground level to get into this field, where are some areas that you could recommend looking?
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, a lot of people, when they think of emergency management, they automatically go to FEMA. Well, don't forget, there is a series of government contractors out there that are contracting with Department of Defense, Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, and other entities, whether it's USDA, EPA, that are doing real work. There's also a lot of federal or government contractors that are partnering with states and localities, especially big urban areas, to come and do simulations or different types of operational modeling. And so they have jobs all over the country and just about every capacity, as even Jen noted. And so you could really go quickly and apply. I mean, there's SAIS, there's Accenture, there's Tidal Basin, and some of them have specific types of disasters that they focus on, whether it's a high threat like an active shooter or riot violence, or something that has to do more in the epidemiology public health sector, or those that deal with more natural disasters, or those that deal with active shooters. And so most will do a lot. Tidal Basin, for example, as you can imagine, focuses a lot on coastal resiliency and flooding, which is a major issue because 75% of the world's population lives within a couple of kilometers of a coastline, and it's only increasing. So if you think about that and where hurricanes, typhoons, land subsidence, sea level rise, earthquakes, wildfires, that's like the danger zone. It's not just a ring of fire anymore. It's everywhere along the coastal coastlines because, it's not sustainable, but there's something that's alluring to people that want to live next to the water. Okay, I get that. So how do you make that work? There's also, don't forget, a lot of nuclear industry entities are along major waterways because they need that water to serve as a cooling agent to many of their towers and other activities. And so before you go all crazy on nuclear, it's not just about nuclear, it's also about solar. So what is solar doing? What types of resiliency to power, like grid security, especially small ones? And what if that goes down? What if there's an attack on it? What if there's a natural disaster that takes it out? How does that impact the livelihood and the critical infrastructure of that area or whatever else it's feeding into? Local governments pay a lot of money, especially in the right areas. In fact, working in local government in Northern Virginia will pay you more than to be an assistant professor. I will say that again, having a PhD and working in a professorial role in Northern Virginia or the DMV is going to be less than working in local government for the most part, if you have the right job and the right credentials. And don't forget, localities are serving as that focal point when we talk about issues around sustainability and resiliency, and you work in every sector. Now you're starting to see different departments within local, state government, otherwise, that are having that emergency management or that type of coordinator to kind of intersect with the person that's, say, in the emergency management, because those are the people that are going to represent your interests at the Emergency Operations Center. So for the planning purposes and response and recovery. Walmart, Home Depot, think about Hurricane Katrina and how the US government couldn't get it together when it came to counterflow, let alone getting resources and other things into the areas that were impacted. But because not Amazon, but Walmart and Home Depot had massive transportation networks with the trucking industry, they could get it in. So now they're hiring a lot of emergency management types of positions. Amazon's on the same platform with that now, although Amazon's taking a hit right now because of how badly they treated their employees during COVID. They fired them if they asked for time off to take care of sick family members. So now they're saying, is the consumer world going to kind of slap Amazon upside the head and be like, you can't treat people that way? Are your employees that are loyal and motivated just really that disposable? And like I said, even universities, academic life, then there's the public safety sector, and then there's just the emergency management office of sustainability. They have a ton of positions around this because, universities too experience disasters. And how are you going to manage that among not just your faculty staff population, but your student population? And there's lots of professional associations that will pay for you to work for them, like IAEM, but that's not the only one. So there's a lot of broad interest. And that's just the national ones that I mentioned. There's a large international set of players that are looking at different types of, they're looking for different skill sets within resiliency and sustainability. Even USAID, World Health Organization. I mean, we could go through the laundry list of United Nations, but there's a lot of NGOs.
So I know tonight we're kind of like IAEM, CEM focused, but
Right.
are there other certifications that you would recommend? I know like some people are cautious because there are some that are like the CEM that are more recognized and respected than others. So are there others besides the CEM that you would recommend people pursuing?
Well, all of us are always interested in getting the Emergency Management Institute laundry list of whatever certifications are free. And so, they never expire, but at the same time, I mean, you can go through and really kind of read through and be quickly answer the questions to get those like individual certificates. But as Jen noted, the Certified Emergency Manager is recognized as a national credential, so you can put CEM behind your name. I remember when I first started teaching at Mason, I had a student that had a CEM and he was getting his master's degree, and he asked me, he goes, "What makes you qualified to teach us? You don't have a CEM." And I went, "I have a PhD in this like specialization in this field. I think I pretty much could get a CEM if I wanted to, but my time has been spent elsewhere." He quickly piped down. But at the same time, it is a value, especially if you're not going to get a PhD or you're not going to get a graduate degree. It will specialize you and set you apart in different ways. And it's more affordable and it's more practical, right? Because while the theory is great, you can attend webinars, you can read articles, you can have conversations like this, but if you really want to get that practical experience, definitely CEM. Others to consider are the Certified Public Manager, if you're going to want to have that type of public admin background without getting a master's in public administration or an undergraduate in public administration. I would check out your state's CPM program because it too is very valuable. And again, it's a nationally accredited certification, so you can put that behind your name. Others typically are just at universities, and that's great, especially if that university is well known for it. I went to Duke's Business School for leadership, but Duke is known for a leadership program, so is MIT. But if I were going to George Mason Schar School for a leadership program, I don't think I would sign up because no one knows that they have it because it's not reputable. It's not out there. It's not mainstream. So you just have to be smart and do your research as to how much does it cost? What does this really look like on paper? And will people be able to quickly resonate with it? I think, let's see, I'm trying to think of others. Those are really, I just had this conversation with a lot of my colleagues, and there's just not a lot of like solid certifications when it comes to emergency management or this area other than CEM. It's just showing up to conferences and participating, especially if you can do a poster or partner with someone. And so then that way you get more visibility and name recognition. It's just hitching your wagon to other people quickly, right?
So you had mentioned pointing out that you had a PhD. Another question that I get a lot from students, and I mean, I get it both about PhDs and DRPHs, but students aren't sure whether they want to take that step. And I mean, I always tell them that it's a lot of work. You have to be kind of crazy. But yeah, there's definitely, if you're not crazy going in, you'll be coming out. So if somebody asked you about like whether you would recommend going for that terminal degree level, what would you say?
I would say if you're not 100% sure, I would work full time for a while and find out how that world tracks for you. And then, because the worst thing you can do is if you're going to get a PhD, not go into the academy or think tank right away and then price yourself out of the industry and not have any experience to take it with you. So I would work full time if that's what you want to do, unless you want to go into the academy and then think about getting a PhD later. Plus, you're going to need that mental break for what you're going to go through. So yeah, a lot of people, let's face it, PhDs get a lot of flack in the community because they automatically, especially if they're in the university system, oh, well, they obviously know better. They're an expert about everything, because that's typically how a lot of PhDs behave and respond to even their own colleagues, and particularly those that don't have a PhD. And so it can be very elitist, and it can also come across as condescending. And that's the last thing you want to do, because the whole purpose of going into this field is to build and maintain and sustain relationships. If you come across as you're the one that's the only one of power and knowledge, you're going to quickly find that you're going to be just in the same position as many of those we see already in very high level administrative positions within FEMA. That's why we keep seeing the same problems.
So fun fact, if you do go for your PhD, I get emails from people, like I have it in my signature line. I mean, that's pretty standard. But when I'm emailing people professionally, I never use it. Like I always sign my name. So I've had people email me, see it in my signature, and they'll still like sign it, sign their email as doctor. And then if I call them by their first name, I still get like doctor. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't be a jerk. Yes. I mean, so when I send an email in my signature line, it has my name and a PhD, but it comes in as Dr. Tonya Neves. But I always just sign my stuff as T. Unless I was teaching and it was a class and I was like, I don't want any other student to feel like there's a personal relationship with another student. So it was always formal, but that's a different world, right?
Yeah.
And you have to maintain that objectivity. And so you don't want to ever make a student feel as if they don't know you and this is their first class, that another student comes up and says, hey, Tonya, how's it going today? I'm like, no, that's Dr. Thornton. You don't want to be biased, right? And that's just a scientific approach of things. But I still work with a lot of colleagues that still introduce themselves, even when they're introducing themselves on the highway patrol project that I mentioned. I worked with a colleague, and I won't tell you names or where they're at, but this individual always introduced herself every time to the now colonel of the highway patrol in Mississippi as Dr. da 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 da. And I'm like, you do realize that he is at this point, the highest law enforcement officer in the whole state. You know, he doesn't come up to you and be like, I'm colonel. I'm like, he could arrest you if he really wanted to. He could sure. So just use your best professional, practice with that. Just don't come across as someone no one wants to get to know and collaborate with, because there's a model I've been working on for emergency management. Now, some people could say it could be expanded, and that's fine, but it's a 4 C's approach. We always talk about communication, but we very rarely actually keep up with it. So we've got to do better in terms of increasing our communication among our entire network. And that also helps us build that network. But once we do that, we've got to take it a step further. We certainly have to do more to coordinate our activities. So then that way there's a better sense of cooperation, because no one wants to work with someone who's not organized or doesn't communicate. So you got to communicate, you got to coordinate so you can cooperate. And over time, the goal is that you do have trusted networks or relationships where I could pick up the phone and be like, hey, Samantha, or actually she's like, Tonya, would you be willing to do it? I'm like, hell yeah, this would be great. I'm happy to talk. So you've got to have that 4th C intact, and that's meaningful collaboration. If you don't have all 4 of those, it will never work. Now, some people talk about consistency and there's some other C's. I'm like, no, let's just get to the basics of what we're really talking about. And this isn't just emergency management. I think this is in all aspects of any type of operation, right? Or any type of meaningful work product or deliverable, or the success to an organization or a mission. So communication, coordination, cooperation, and collaboration. There you go. And that's essentially what I based my dissertation on, but I didn't know that that's what I was getting at the time. The model has evolved much. And if you have that, you'll increase knowledge and participation, just throughout the entire process. So we don't want to be like our own academic units where we're siloed off, we need to communicate. So then it increases and then it increases the 4 E's. How many of you know what the 4 E's are? So you got the 4 C's. I didn't come up with the 4 E's though. I'm not taking credit for the 4 E's. So you've got efficiency, effectiveness, expediency, and efficacy. There you go. Yeah, I don't know which order those go in. But yeah. And, sometimes FEMA will offer these regional free training programs. Well, I'm sure they'll get back into it post-COVID or pre-post-COVID, right? Sign up for some of them. They're a day long, and you actually have to go in person, but man, you meet a lot of people. Even the Emergency Management Institute does a higher education conference that just ended last week. It was virtually. Typically, if you're a student, they give you free registration. But when they do it in person, they'll give you a place to stay at the campus in Emmitsburg, Maryland, and you have to pay for your food pass. Typically, colleges will try and come up with the money, especially if you go to your undergrad or graduate council, or you go to your department. I think when I went, I obviously drove, and it was Emmitsburg, so I paid for my own gas. And then the university paid for my food pass at the mess hall, because you stay on a campus that is gated. You're not going in. It's where the fire academy is. And you dine together, and it's just like it's a mess hall, so that you eat. And so the pass was like $140 for the week. And then there's the bar, if you can go to the bar, but it only takes cash. So then you have to go into this like dormitory in the basement, and there's this like ATM, and then drinks are like $2. It's almost like being on a military base there's some military, but not so much.
We actually looked at that, but I saw it too late. But I'm definitely going to keep my eyes open for that next year.
Yeah, you should. It usually opens up in February, and you just have to have a student identification number. If you've done a FEMA certification through EMI, you already have that. And then you just apply. And you can always email me if you need to learn how to navigate it. But it's a great group of people. It's not just academics. There's a lot of people from local government, whether law enforcement or otherwise. There's a lot of people from FEMA that come. It's really cool. And that's a quick way to meet a lot of people and all have to stay together in a compound of sorts. And you do bond over the food's not too bad. I like
Okay,
it.
I'm sure somebody
Savannah.
else has a question besides me taking all of them, because I'll keep going.
I do have one. I was wondering, what were some of your challenges you experienced as you were transitioning from your student academic role and a doctoral level into the professional world, specifically in governmental roles?
Okay, so my biggest challenge was that since I worked on campus full-time in R&D, I had access to funds that not even faculty did. And so it was very challenging for me to really connect with faculty in my own department. It took years because say I worked on a project with one faculty member and I subsidized their summer salary, and the next year I didn't, because either the project didn't get refunded or maybe it didn't work out so well. And then if I didn't give them money the next year and I gave it to someone else on another project, it gets very political. So for me, that was the biggest challenge, especially as you're going out into the academic, well, I wasn't going in the academic world, but you need to be very sensitive to how others, if you're going to get a PhD, are going to respond, because jealousy is abound and ideas can be stolen. And you can be thrown under the bus very quickly. So you got to be 5 steps ahead and very strategic about what you share, when you share, and who you connect with. And just because you've connected with them does not mean it will not come back to bite you in your butt. It can, and it has to me twice. It didn't do anything to damage my career. It was more of a very painful divorce in terms of that relationship, and it hurts, very difficult, because you think someone's loyal and trustworthy, and that's not always the case. Someone, you don't need to do anything to like put other people in a position to ride your coattail. Okay, make sure everyone holds their own. The other thing is to be cognizant of when you come up with a really great idea and you've written someone, that it's not been stolen. Because if you share your ideas or your paper, I've seen faculty take students, not at George Mason, I've seen this at other institutions. I've seen some of my friends growing up in, we talk in the American Society for Public Administration. There was a paper that came out in a journal article. It was a student's paper, and her name was not on it. I've been turned into...
Doesn't happen at Penn State either.
That's different issues at Penn State. I personally got too close to some other research that someone else thought it was their own little niche area, and I got funding from NOAA to do my dissertation on it. And I was doing it on Hurricane Katrina, but then when the oil spill, Deepwater Horizon oil spill happened, I was going to add a battery of questions to the survey, so then that way I could switch. Same methodology, same approach, but a new battery of just disaster-specific questions, because all the other stuff was still the same. So then I'd have the Hurricane Katrina specific questions, and now this, because it was novel. No one else, was going to be able to jump on it, and we had just got IRB approval. So I called up IRB. I said, hey, I'm going to go down and just talk to some people. It's my people. I go fishing down there. I got in touch with one of the local captains, and so I went out on the boat with the Coast Guard, with BP contractors, with Halliburton, everybody else, just watching, right? And because it got too close to what someone else had done with other oil spills, they turned me into the whistleblower hotline for unethical practices of human subjects research. It went through 6 months of hell, excuse my language, having to deal with that. But it came out that I didn't violate anything. But it's just going through the process. It's like, really? You spent that much energy just to keep me from doing this, and I'm still going to do it, and just to slow me down. That's all it was about. So you have to be aware of these things and just kind of keep your ear to the ground. But for the most part, that's like less than 5% of what you'll experience, depending on what field you're in. And strictly in the field of emergency management, I've not seen that. Not really. That was in sociology. I'll give that one, Yeah. So you just got to be smart about who you're surrounding yourself with and who you're partnering with. But that doesn't mean don't take a chance. Just don't, how they say, if you fool me once, shame on you. If you fool me twice, shame on me. Don't let there be really a third time, ever. Even if it makes your life more difficult in the immediate context, it will definitely save you a lot of heartache later on. So, yeah. But yeah, the other things are knowing that you can ask people for recommendations or to offer an introduction. It's okay. And then also I would build relationships with people that are going to write your recommendation letters, because there's 3 types of recommendation letters. And trust me, every faculty member has them on hand, or people that write them a lot. There's I can't say anything negative, but let me just say this, and it's very short, and typically you're never going to see it because it's restricted. The second is, okay, I remember this person and they're pretty good, but I don't really know who they are. I can't say anything other than, okay, they'd probably be a good fit, but there's nothing meaningful to the context. And then there's the third one where you actually can write it custom tailored to that specific student or that person. And with that, I would diversify it. So when I have students ask me if I would write them a recommendation letter, I would say, okay, I'm happy to do that. Send me your resume. This is kind of what I can say. There may be someone else that is a better fit for you because I don't really know you. But if I do know you, I would also say, who do you have writing your other letters? And if it's all faculty, my first recommendation would be, you need to either let me go or let someone else go, and let's talk about who would be a stronger fit, because you need representation from the practice world, from like probably the service world, and then also from the academic world, because that rounds you out as an individual and what your KSAs are. So your knowledge, skills, and abilities. So every time I had a student that worked with me and my colleague who's a retired ambassador, I would always say, go to him and ask him for the recommendation letter, because a retired ambassador writes your recommendation letter is going to give you a lot more weight than me. And hell, I ask him for him all the time. I'm like, can you just support me on this project? Just so I can say I know you. I mean, we worked well together, but so a lot of students just want to do regular academic letters. So that would be my recommendation.
Another thing I do when students ask me for recommendation letters is I ask them to write the draft. And because that way I can see what they want highlighted, because I mean, they've looked into the position, the program, whatever the most. And then, I mean, obviously I'll cater it to the parts that I can actually speak to if they go outside that lane. But that's always really helpful, because because I'll see like different sorts of emotion and enthusiasm coming through that doesn't always come through in a resume. And it also really shows what you want highlighted from your because a letter is not going to be as long as your resume. So if you are asking for a recommendation letter, I would also, if they don't ask for a draft, ask if you can give them one to at least get them started.
That is excellent advice, because then that way it will expedite that process. Otherwise, you don't know what's going on in their world, and they may have a lot of other things, or they may have a lot of other letters to write ahead of you. But they're going to have some standard language already crafted. Just, but if you've got something that you want to be highlighting, make sure that you offer to send them that, or just go ahead and attach it. But the other thing is make sure you don't send the same paragraph to all the people that are writing your recommendation letters, because I've seen that happen too. And also, and make sure that you give them the person, the address, all of that, because otherwise they got to go look it up specifically. I wrote 18 letters for a PhD student last year looking for a job. 18 letters. I was like, at some point, can you just send me like the block of who to who, so I can just take that out and copy it in, because I'm tired of writing that. It takes up a lot of effort, especially when there's like 5 a day coming in. Like, I don't have time for this. So anything that you can ease the process on the person that's writing the letter, that'd be good.
So this isn't so much an advice question, but this is more just like unless somebody else has one. All right. But I had a speaker come to one of our Penn State monthly webinars, and he was a former professor of mine, and he said that I was one of his favorite students because I asked so many questions. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I do. Not so much advice, but just out of curiosity, out of all of the responses, all of the incidents, everything that you've been involved in, is there one that's like maybe not the most meaningful, but the most memorable or the most important to your career?
In terms of like activities, research, publications, networks?
Anything. If I asked you like what you thought the most meaningful one was to you.
Oh, wow. I would say the one that we're wrapping up right now. We have a book project, an edited volume with Emerald Publishing on the role of law enforcement and emergency management, homeland security. Granted that we had but brought in authors for these respective chapters prior to the pandemic, prior to what all happened last year with riot violence and racial issues and tensions. I've already pitched that we should have a second version of this. But what is going to be very unique about this book that took 2.5 years to pull together was that we made it so that a practitioner had to pair with an academic, and an academic had to pair with a practitioner on every chapter. So then that way, not only can it be translatable to someone in graduate school, whether at the master's or PhD level, that is specifically wanting to focus in public safety or emergency management, but it's also a great how-to in the world at the local and state level of what's really going on in terms of the thought process or the strategic thinking, or where the parallels occurring within these different communities. And that is being offered on pre-order right now, but I'm still approving all the pages. Yeah, I'm getting no royalties for that one, so make sure if you ever write a book, you get royalties. But that one's a big one. The other was the Department of Defense critical infrastructure project, where it landed me a subject matter expert. I think apart in my professional career, apart from getting a PhD, that was pretty sweet. You can be like, yeah, I'm a subject matter expert for the Department of Defense and critical infrastructure. Am I old enough? Do I really know what I'm talking about? This is impossible. And I'm sure, Jen, you thought the same thing. You're so excited to get your PhD, but then you're like, did I really just do this? I don't really think I'm that smart. I know I'm good, and I ran the marathon, and I hit the wall a couple of times, but no. So, you'll have those humbling moments no matter what is successful in your career, but then you kind of like, that's pretty cool too. So, but then the Highway Patrol project, because at the end of the day, the most meaningful one would be developing all those systems to really make a difference in traffic safety across the entire state over a 10-year period. I mean, those systems are still in place and still evolving. I'm just not there. So, yeah.
Well, here, I'm going to piggyback off of your, am I old enough? Am I good enough? So yes, you have these moments where you're really wondering, like, am I, like, people are asking me questions, should they be? How do you kind of, how do you reconcile that, and how do you get over those like moments of self-doubt when you're in this field, and when you're advancing in this field, and what helps you get the confidence to keep moving forward and asserting yourself as an expert in this field?
So it's going to take time to build that confidence, especially if you're not a strong public speaker or someone that can like jump in and out of conversations and weave them all together. That just comes with a lot of conversations and just, I would love to say wisdom, but just age and comfort, right? Because at some point you're going to start picking up on enough talking points and you're going to be able to have your own that you can share with others, and you will become that expert. You'll know that better than anyone else. It doesn't require a PhD to have that kind of capability, but it's just repetition. I remember for the first 10 years, I always would go to my conferences and I'd have my little note cards and I'd be shaking. And I knew my stuff, but you'd be too nervous because of stage fright or other people. What if they ask me a question I don't know the answer? Am I going to be in the hot seat? Oh God, am I going to look like an idiot? First thing is do not lie. If you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. You'll get there. And if people are really, truly trying to help you, and this is what this is all about, they're going to get you there. They're not going to ask you or try and grill you. Now, the jerks will, but don't worry. Usually when that happens, someone will tear them a new one as soon as that session's over outside in the hallway. I've seen that happen too. And it's not just at conferences, it's at meetings. Just don't take it personally, but you will. Because it's going to hurt because you think it's a reflection of you. It's not. Usually when that happens, it's a reflection of the other person being very insecure and trying to position themselves in power or influence or something else. And you never know. Maybe they're just having a really bad day and they just woke up on the wrong side and they're just a jerk. But I would say if you've got an elevator speech, start working on that 90 seconds, right? So for me, it's the 4 C's model. I really know that well, and I can relate that back to critical infrastructure, public safety and emergency management. Those are my 3 areas. And so why is that important? Well, you need the 4 C's for all of them. And then, the rest will get you there. And it's okay to chase the rabbit. Remember how we opened this up by saying, I'm sure we're going to chase it around and around, but we'll eventually tie the bow back together and it'll be pretty on top of the box. Know that you can always do that as well. It's okay to get off track. It's okay to lose kind of sight. Just make sure that before you wrap up that conversation, you always kind of come back to what was the initial comment, okay? That's just a unique it's a parlor trick. Most people forget what they were even talking about. So just jot yourself a note down, right? Even if you're not writing down talking points, just write down what you started with. And then, but if you can't do that, just remember what your elevator speech is and then wrap it up with that. A different way of saying it. So like school, graduate programs, I had a professor who retired from the Navy and then he went into the EPA and help write the Air Pollution Act, the amendment. Yeah, I think he was in the Seattle office. In any case, he says when you build presentations, and this still holds true, tell them what you're going to tell them in the opening slide. No, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So many people will give presentations that don't actually open it up with an introductory statement, kind of like an essay, and then you're going to tell them in detail what you're going to tell them, and then wrap it up with a bow at the very end. So tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. That's all you have to do. But have your elevator speech ready, because that's where you can have your expertise and your confidence. And you can still, and it's okay, still other people's ideas. Weave them into your own, because you're going to be experiencing and collecting pieces of knowledge along the way. I mean, I always heard people talk about communication and coordination. Oh, I got so tired of it. And was like, where's the collaboration in all of this? No one likes each other. They're sitting across from each other and they're talking about it, but you can tell by the body language that they really hate each other. Well, how's anything going to get done? How's anything going to change if they don't actually collaborate? And you can't just force collaboration. So that's why I started studying social capital and political trust, because place matters. So you've got to start at that root and you've got to build it out from there. And that's kind of what I've been working on for 20 years. And I still don't do it well. So David's like, no, I don't know, maybe you do, maybe not. But I know this, no one does it better than me because I'm the one who's doing it. It's just, where's my own standard versus what other people's standard? Remember, you're the smartest in that area. Everyone else just kind of falls in line. Any other questions? Burning or otherwise? Samantha, you didn't have any questions? I know you've heard me blab a lot before. Nothing from you, well, Savannah did ask a question. David, Monica? Oh, okay, Samantha.
Hey, Sam, you're muted. If
I'm
you want to,
I'm muted.
I can hear you
Okay,
now.
I unmuted myself. So, Tonya, what is your favorite project you've ever worked on?
Definitely the highway patrol one. And I think part of it is because the federal government was requiring the agency to spend overtime dollars for DUIs, occupant protection, which is seatbelt, and speeding on 6 major federal holidays. You all probably know these as campaigns: click it or ticket, over the limit, under arrest. And they center on New Year's, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Labor Day, 4th of July, Memorial Day, right? And so if you're a rural state and you're having to spend 60% of your overtime dollars on, say, Thanksgiving, when no one goes anywhere, the bars aren't even open in Mississippi really on that holiday. So there's not as much activity on the streets with respect to either drinking and driving or speeding that then coupled with drinking and driving. So you're wasting that money essentially. So if you were to be able to do kind of a geographic and like spatial and temporal analysis of when the DUIs are occurring over 10 years or since the data system had been built and we were plugging in, then you could say, okay, well, actually, we see that there's a real big uptick in February. We need to redirect some of those resources to put more officers in overtime in a certain part of the state based on those numbers spiking. You want to know what those numbers were? All the drunk people leaving Mardi Gras coming up either I-10 going back towards Alabama, Georgia, Florida, or going north on I-55 towards Chicago. Other things were, oh, well, let's do a lot around, what was another holiday? Memorial Day was a big one, but it was more centered in the center of the state, the capital, because of the big reservoir, because everyone's ready to get out on the water. Same thing with Labor Day. So you don't need to have those in certain regions unless you're actually seeing people out and doing things. So it was more culturally based rather than holiday based. And then when you've got 2 major SEC teams playing football every Saturday, and there's not enough hotel rooms to accommodate, that has changed since then. And you don't have the force that you need that's already on the field, but let alone, because you have to protect the actual game, but then you have to have people that are actually protecting the roads and being seen out on those to reduce traffic fatalities. Yeah, a lot of people in college at the time were not happy about how I single-handedly increased the presence of law enforcement on the roads for traffic stops and different types of roadblocks in the following football games.
I was talking to somebody who did the one of the mobile hospital units at Penn State, and they said that it wasn't the students that got them with the drinking. It was the parents of students, like the Penn State grads that came back and thought
Yep.
they still drink in their 40s and 50s the way they did when they were 18. Didn't work
Yep.
so well.
Yes, exactly right. So, I mean, we had to argue with the federal government and show them the numbers of, we don't need to spend the money here, we need to spend it here, and this is where it's going to drive down traffic fatalities, because the money was really based in traffic fatalities. And then from there, we went into other areas. But yeah, so that was really meaningful because we made a difference in saving lives. So. Oh. Jen's got a visitor who's trying to give her lots of love. But yeah, I know it's getting close to 9 o'clock. So any other questions? And Samantha, please feel free to share my contact information. You know, you can find me on Facebook at Tonya Thornton.
Absolutely.
I think we're connected, aren't we, Samantha, on
Yeah,
Facebook?
I think I have you on Facebook. I have you on LinkedIn. I have your email. I'll disperse
Stalking mode? I'm just teasing.
a little bit.
But see, if you connect with me there, then you can kind of see some of the other connections that I have, or I can kind of show you. And I'm happy to have one-on-ones as well. Anything to help someone wanting to go in this field and that's the big piece. I can't just come up with the 4Cs model and then stop short of not also helping out fellow future colleagues, students, and otherwise. So I'm going to practice what I preach.
Thank you.
Of course. So do you have to do some wrapping up, or should I jump off, or?
No, I think we're good. Thank you so much for coming tonight. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to talking to all of you in the future as well. So,
Thank you so much.
of course. And I look forward to seeing you at the next IAEM Region 3 Happy Hour.
I will be there because it was a great time last time.
You know, we need to do one of those trivia games again. It's a lot of fun. Okay, I'll try and set that up for July.
Great.
Definitely August, but maybe for July.
So you said that those are typically the third Thursday of the month?
Typically, but we kind of took the summer off just because, in that, either summer travel, end of semester, people hitting the wall, or just kind of,
Totally understandable.
yeah. So, and I was the one organizing it, and then I left the university and I was like, oh, okay. But yes, I did talk to the treasurer and secretary and Walter, of course, the president, about doing one for July or August for sure. So
That would be great.
awesome. Well, you all have a great rest of the evening and week ahead, and try not to get too hot. It's coming.
You too, Tonya. Thank you so much.
You're most
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
Samantha.
you.
Thanks, David. Bye, Savannah. Bye, Monica. Bye, Jen.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.